Okay, if we're going to interrupt each other, you boys can go have fun. Let me just finish my point right here. My point...
Hold on, don't assume my gender.
Oh yeah, you assumed our genders. I'm a citizen of this country, and yet she's wearing a badge saying Free Palestine. So she clearly is involved in political activism connected to other countries. What you just saw was a perfect example of rhetoric, of excuses, and of the villainization of the white working class Christian. So, ladies and gentlemen, the kind of hypocrisy that we see from the militant left and from the liberal progressive is that they'll stand against Islamophobia here, but they are silent against anti-Christian pogroms in Egypt and Pakistan and Nigeria and Algeria. They are opposed. They are silent. They are silent about the religious genocide of Christians in Iraq.
Triggered lefty.
Come and debate me, miss. Yeah. What's your name?
Oh no.
Ollie.
Nice to meet you, Ollie.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so your point about, oh my god, the left here isn't going against ISIS or the militant left in Islamic countries is simply because I am not Egyptian. I do not have any control of the Egyptian government. Where I do have control as a citizen of the UK is over the UK government, the UK press. I am fighting injustices in my country. And my point is, if you're going to go off against militant Islam and caliphate, how come we're not hearing about you talking about militant Christians in Jamaica or Uganda, which are currently killing LGBT people? How about I don't hear you going off? How about I don't hear you going off about the alt-right in this country attacking mosques, burning them down, the Finsbury Park mosque attack. The fact of this country is that if you are Muslim, you are inherently, you face prejudice that you do not face as a Christian.
Prejudice.
Just because there's one Muslim man in power doesn't mean that no Muslims get oppressed against.
Okay, can I reply, Ollie?
Let me just finish my point very quickly. I'll let you finish.
By the way, bro, this is how you do an intelligent conversation.
Leave him alone. I'm not talking about him.
I'm talking to him.
Well, I'm not interested in him. I'm debating you, so you look at me and answer me.
Go on, sister.
Okay, so my point is, if you're talking about, the militant Muslim, militant Islam, how come you are silent? And I mean silent on other nations. I haven't heard you talk about terrorist Buddhists in Thailand. I haven't heard you talk at all about in Malaysia, the anti-communist mafia there that slaughtered millions of people less than 10 years ago. How come when we talk about Islam in this country, whenever someone who happens to be of Muslim faith does something awful, I'm not saying all Muslims are suddenly inherently better, their faith or their race is put in front of everything. Pakistani man just X. When Joseph Fritzl does anything, is his race or is his religion put in front of that? That's my ending point.
Thank you, Ollie. Thank you. So, firstly, let's just correct the category mistake. Islam is not a race, Muslims are not a race.
Yeah, I said
Secondly, many of you have heard me speak before. How many of you heard me speak against ethno-nationalists?
Yeah, many times.
How many of you heard me speak against communists? How many of you heard me speak against Buddhist terrorists who persecute Christians? Thank you very much. So you're wrong. You're just plain wrong. Secondly, she said this is often a left-wing excuse to why they're so selective on their issues. I can't protest against the jihadis or against the non-jihadi Muslims who are just generally persecuting Christians in Egypt and Pakistan. She snorts in derision. But I tell you, she has not even looked into this topic. Because I'm a British citizen. I'm sorry, didn't the whole BLM kick off because of something that happened in America? Wasn't that the whole reason why the BLM marches started? Because of something that happened in a different country? What hypocrisy of the left! It is simply that the left has an ideological blind spot, and the blind spot is this: we're against injustice unless the injustice is something that is emanating from what we perceive to be an ethnic minority.
Perfect.
That is why the young lady doesn't know about Nissa Hussein, a British Christian who had Muslims attempt to murder him in the UK. That's why the young lady doesn't know about the other examples of Christians, like Mohammed, a friend of mine, someone I know, who has been persecuted by Muslims because he became a Christian in this country. That's why the lady doesn't know that or speak out against the widespread prejudice against Christians and Jews that emanates from sections of the Muslim community. Now, we have to obviously differentiate two things: the Muslim and the religion. Lots of Muslims are better than their religion. Lots of Muslims have very humanitarian ethic. They have compassion. They're good people, not to be villainized because of the crimes of a few. However, when you look at Islam as an ideology, the books and the texts, you see injustice being taught. An injustice like, for example, the blood money paid for the death of a Christian is half that of the death of a Muslim. Now, do you agree?
No, you haven't gone. You didn't answer
Okay,
any of our questions.
I'll answer it the next time. You reply and then I'll answer your question.
Yes, first of all, my issue with your argument here is that you were just strawmanning me and going off of whatever you want in order to prove your point. Firstly,
I was talking about the left.
Okay, great. I'm not the left. You're debating me. You're not debating this vague concept of the left you have come up with. Okay, my point is that in the Bible, like in the Quran, there are many cases, like when God tells the tribe of Israel, oh, you don't have enough women. Okay, just go kidnap and rape whoever you want. If you rape a woman, you have to pay her father 15 silvers in order to marry her. That's in the Old Testament. You can read it, my friend.
50 shekel, I have it here.
She's
right. She's right.
It is.
She's
so,
right.
Okay, what's interesting here is that you are pick and choosing what you want.
Shut up, Ron.
It's picking and choosing from whatever religious text you want in order to prove your point. Do I agree that there are some passages in the Quran that I personally disagree with? Yes. But the problem is, you say, oh, some Muslims are nice, some Muslims are better than their religion. But then when you go on to talk about Muslims as this vague, threatening entity...
I talked about Islam.
Islam, Muslims...
Blurring, not the same thing.
It is the same thing.
Well, the way you're talking about it, you're calling out Islam as their religion.
Thank you very
So
much.
if you're going on talking about the second largest religion in the entire world, painting up all these broad strokes, that is frankly a very prejudiced thing for you to do. And so I think you want to talk about fighting injustices. Why don't you actually listen? There are plenty of Muslims who renounce jihadis, who renounce extremists, who do that all the time. Why is it that whenever, say, in Uganda, another LGBT person is killed or beaten to death, we don't go up to every Christian and go, so you need to apologize for that, mate, because some of you of your faith did it. But whenever a Muslim individual does something, we go to all Muslims and say, hey, mate, we need a statement on you, renouncing jihadi, renouncing FGM, renouncing this. The Muslim faith has 1.2 billion people. You're expecting all of them to pay for the crimes of a minute. Simple. Yes.
So the characterizations and strawmans that Ollie has used in her rhetoric are numerous. Firstly, she accuses me of generalizing about Muslims, when anyone who actually listened to what I said heard me very distinctly say that not all Muslims are the same, and that there is a distinction between what the religion teaches vis-a-vis necessarily what the individual does. But she ignored that. She ignored that. Well, people can see it on camera, can't they? They can see it on camera. We have to obviously differentiate two things: the Muslim and the religion. Lots of Muslims are better than their religion. Lots of Muslims have very humanitarian ethic. They have compassion. They're good people. Secondly, She goes on to say that I and people like me go round to all Muslims demanding that they apologise for every time that there's a terrorist attack. Utter lie. Complete lie. I've never done that. I've never met a Christian who does that either. She's just using characterizations. Now please notice the Liberal Progressive talked about listening and she's now ignoring. Just another example of their kind of virtue signalling hypocrisy. Then she goes on to talk about the Christian faith and Bible passages, one of which she generalized as if all Christians believe this. The woman is ignorant of the topic she's talking about because Christians read the Bible through a covenant matrix. The Old Testament belongs to the Old Covenant. Christians do not follow the Old Covenant. If she was anything other than another virtue-signalling, ignorant progressive, she would not have made that generalization about what Christians believe. She would have had the intelligence to know that Christians follow the New Testament because we are a New Covenant people. So, I would like, she says, why do we not protest? Why do we protest about when LGBT suffer in places like Uganda? Now, this is the economy of injustices and the economy of solidarity that she appealed to earlier. I do not stand against the prejudice faced by Christians in other countries because I'm a British citizen. Well, I'm a Christian, and Christians in this country have been the victim of LGBT militants who have gone out to try and ruin their businesses, have gone out and tried to ruin their lives, and there are countless examples of them doing so. When that injustice is dealt with here, then let's talk about what's happening in Uganda. And no, I don't agree with LGBT being killed at all, anywhere. Incidentally, Islam prescribes the death penalty for LGBT. I wonder if she'll be protesting against that anytime soon. Off the roof! Off the roof! Chuck them off the roof! Or burn them alive! That's another punishment.
Are you okay with the gay men?
Are you okay with that?
Sweetie,
Off the roof.
sweetie, calm down.
I'm
Let
not
me
off the roof.
let me
I know
respond.
you're sweetie, lovely.
Well, you know.
Let the lady speak.
Okay, my first point, if everyone could just be a bit calm.
And another gay man off a roof somewhere in the Muslim world.
Ollie, people will help you here. It's just a thing, you just got to talk.
I know that. My point is did I ever once defend the point of Islam? I never said Islam was a completely innocent book. I was saying it's interesting how this man and his supporters are cherry picking what they want from groups they don't like in order to vilify them. You were talking about, I never once said, oh, everything in the Quran is great, Islam has no issues. I never said that. It's interesting how you assume my ignorance, good sir. That proves your prejudice. Anyway.
Your ignorance is on display.
Leviticus
Honey, if I wanted your advice,
20:13.
I'd ask you.
Anyway.
Kill homosexual and lesbian, put them to death. This is according to your Bible.
New Testament?
Old Testament. And as Jesus, he came to not abolish,
Let the
destroy.
lady speak. I'm talking to Ollie. Ollie, let her talk.
Okay, and
Context.
and
Context.
also you talk about
Context.
Can we just see this badge?
yeah. Which badge? This
The
one?
Free Palestine one.
Yeah.
Because she only protests about things in this country.
I never. Let me just
Changing
finish.
the topic now.
Let me
Only
just
protests
finish.
about things in this country.
Okay, it's interesting how you're changing the topic and actually instead of actually listening to me, which is something you criticised me for earlier. So if you're going to criticise me for something, at least hold up to your own very feeble standards. Okay, moving on. I never said for 1 second that the Quran was an entirely good or sacred book. I never said that anything was great. All I was pointing out is that you were cherry picking what you want from certain holy books to make an answer. And moving on to your very interesting point about Christians in this country being persecuted by LGBT militants. I'm a member of the LGBT community. I must have missed that meeting when we decided to form a military. Okay, so what you're talking about is when you talk about kind of Christians being persecuted by LGBT people, I've got a question.
I didn't say people, I said militants.
Militants.
I know lots of people who are LGBT that wouldn't dream of doing that.
I know, and you're not racist because you have a black friend. Anyway, let me continue.
I do actually. I do. It's right. She's right. I am not a racist, and I do have a black friend.
Let me continue.
Captain Bloodfire.
This is my brother, by the way. This is my brother in the faith. Am I a racist?
You're not related.
Am I a racist?
Did I ever say you were?
You tried to insinuate it.
I was saying that excuse is saying, oh, I can't be prejudiced against a certain group of people because I have a friend in this group.
An excuse that I never made.
It's something as odd.
He hasn't listened to a word you've said.
Oh, I have. That's why I've responded to it. That I've responded to it.
Okay, okay, if we're going to interrupt each other, you boys can go have fun. Let me just finish my point right here. My point...
Hold on, don't assume my gender.
Oh yeah. You assumed our genders. Not very progressive.
Okay.
Not very progressive.
Okay. It's interesting that you instantly assume I'm some sort of progressive liberal when I've never really stated my political. I've never really said which party I belong to.
I'll bet money on it.
But anyway, let me continue my point. My point here is that when we talk about Islamophobia in this country, and when we're talking about a group of Muslim people being oppressed, we're not saying that suddenly all Muslim people are innately holier than everyone else, or innately good, or innately better. Same when we're talking about black people in this country. When we say Black Lives Matter, when we say we want equality, we're not saying that suddenly they are better than everyone else. And what's very interesting is when you talk to privileged people about equality, they suddenly get terrified because they are terrified at the prospect of being remotely oppressed in any sense of the word. And this shows how privileged they are. When the idea of giving up any privilege they have suddenly sounds like oppression to them. And so I just find it kind of remarkable that you're cherry picking these arguments, you're not really responding to me, you're screaming about, Islam and things like that, and you're screaming about the Old Testament and punishments in the Middle East against gay people, and suddenly I'm for them. Yeah, sure, as a queer person myself, I'm clearly very for gays in Saudi Arabia being thrown off bridges. I will tell you when you're ready to reply. So,
we'll let you finish
my final point is this. What I find in this debate is that you have your pre-prepared notes, you have your pre-prepared lectures, which is fine. But you're not really answering me. You like to twist and cherry pick and change what you want to make your arguments, and you're not actually listening to people. And this is what I find with people of your political persuasion. Instead of trying to listen and advocate for equality, to you suddenly you have to twist equality into something that sounds like oppression for the white man. When no one's ever said let's oppress the white man, no one's ever said let's go against Christians, and that's it sounds like.
Okay, can I reply now?
Yes.
Ollie, I do find it funny that Ollie's initial excuse for not standing up against Christophobia, and I'd be interested to know if she believes it even exists. Not standing up to Christophobia that exists right across the Islamic world is because she says, I'm a citizen of this country, and yet she's wearing a badge saying Free Palestine. So she clearly is involved in political activism connected to other countries. So what we're really saying is, of course it is, I don't want to stand up to Christophobia in the Islamic world because that doesn't serve my particular set of prejudices.
He just talked about this.
And what we see from the liberal progressive left is the simple use of straw man and villainization. She doesn't even know that my political viewpoint sits both across the left and the right, because a Christian worldview sits across the left and the right. She used tropes based upon the Old Testament in complete ignorance of the fact that Christians use a covenant system to read the Bible. These kind of stereotypes and these kind of characterizations are very widespread amongst people who have the liberal progressive agenda. That is the way that they operate. Villainization, characterize assassination. And they simply ignore facts because facts are inconvenient. fact is, she talks about freeing Palestine. Does she know that Christians are persecuted by Palestinian Muslims? Does she know that Christians suffer because of the policies of Israel? They get it twice. Once because they're not part of the Jewish state, and once because they're Christians in a Muslim majority. Will she stand against that? Will she speak against that? No, I said on record, she may have not heard me, that I'm against killing LGBT anywhere in the world. Let me ask you, are you against the idea of killing Muslims who want to become Christian?
Okay.
I need to ask.
You kind of clearly so lost.
Look, I'm an Arab, yeah? We live side by side, Christians, Muslims, no problem.
Yeah, let me just
Tell that to the Assyrian Christians and the Armenian Christians who suffered a genocide in 1915 and in 2012 or 13 when ISIS went out to butcher them.
Okay.
Go on,
That is a political thing, not a
excuse me, can I just finish my point?
I'm just telling you he's a liar because I'm an Arab. We have the adopted children.
You don't know batting and Arabic will record, bro.
He's a
So
liar.
walk away, bro.
and be quiet, I'm speaking
walk
to
away.
you. You did it to the Christians, why won't you do it to the Muslims?
The Muslims, the Arabs,
Because that one was being
not
ridiculous.
like anybody else, and this
Anyway.
And he's not.
So, let me. Okay, so I find it interesting that because of my badge, you've suddenly gone off on this crazy little. I wasn't here to debate Palestine. If you want to, you'll have to book an appointment. I'm rather busy and quite tired right now. So, you're saying, am I against the killing of Christians? Yes, I support human rights. I'm against, the killing of anyone based on their political beliefs. But what we are talking about, and why I originally came to speak to you about, is because you seem to be ignoring the inherent Islamophobia that many Muslims face in this country. And yes, it's horrible that Christians are getting killed, but you point out the Armenian genocide, you point out ISIS in 2013. Yes, these are all awful, terrible, terrible things. The thing is that you seem to talk like Islam is inherently a religion that cannot live side by side with other religions.
Correct.
When you believe that Islam that's interesting because the Ottoman Empire managed to do that for about 600 years.
Do you know anything about the Ottoman Empire?
I know.
Do you know that they took 2 million Christian children as slaves, kidnapped them from their families? You don't, do you? You don't know nothing about the Ottoman Empire.
If you let me finish my point.
Do you know that during the Ottoman Empire, Christian Copts were regularly attacked in the street? That they had to wear special clothing that identified them as Christians, a bit like a Jewish star, in Nazi Germany. Did you know that? You didn't, did you? You don't know nothing about the Ottoman Empire. You don't know nothing about what they did to Eastern Europe.
What were you going to say about the Ottoman Empire?
Let me finish my point. I'm saying.
Go on, about the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah,
How wonderful it was.
I never said the Ottoman Empire. I was saying that there were many cities throughout the Ottoman Empire and throughout the Islamic Golden Age in which Christians, Jewish and Muslim people all lived together.
lasted 200 years in the Middle East.
Yes, it did. The Baghdad House of Wisdom, for example, to which we owe algebra, to which we owe lemons, to which we owe all that.
Which they took from the Hindus. And India. But you didn't know that either, did you?
Did you know that India was Muslim for a very long time
No,
too?
it was Hindu. Well, I mean, the
about-
religions that came to make up Hinduism.
Well, see,
They
this is-
invaded India. It
this
was
is-
one of the biggest mass murders ever in history.
What I find interesting here is that you seem completely either ignorant, unwilling, or unable to comprehend the fact that it's not purely religion that drives people to commit atrocities. It's greed, it's wealth. If you want to talk about what the Ottoman Empire did, I never said the Ottoman Empire was amazing. I was saying there was evidence of many Muslims, of many Jews, of many Christians living together in harmony, and you can see that.
Harmony?
In
Do you know
London.
anything about Dimitude?
Can I
Harmony? Do you know anything about Dimitude? Do you know what they did to Christians? Christians could not practice their faith publicly. Christians could not ring their bells. Christians could not go on their processions. Christian men couldn't marry Muslim women.
Like I said-
Muslims couldn't become Christians. Christians couldn't evangelize. They had to pay a tax.
Excuse
They
me,
had
sir,
to pay a tax.
You're the one going
they
after
had to
people
pay a
for
tax
interrupting
to
everyone, yet you're
stop
more than
their
happy to interrupt me
children
and
from
talk over
being
me.
kidnapped.
Which
From being kidnapped.
Talk about
And you're
LGBT
saying,
community,
oh,
you're obsessed
they
with
lived
Muslims.
in
She's talking
harmony.
about the LGBT
Get
community.
out of your Walt Disney version of history. Go and pick up a book. Read the hagiographies, look at the Christian martyrs and how many Christians were killed because they wouldn't embrace Islam.
I've got a
Go
question.
and look those
the
things
Great
up.
Dying, was that a fault of Christians? Just a quick question. The Great... Oh,
The what?
someone needs to pick up a book and learn history now.
The
Oh
what?
no!
No, it is- I
I
didn't hear
thought I
the
was
term.
the ignorant one.
I didn't hear
the
your
Great
term.
Dying.
The Great Dying. This is not a term I've heard before.
Oh,
I
a
don't know
Great
what you're
Dying
referring
because
to.
of the Columbian Exchange, in which 90% of the indigenous population of America was wiped out in one of the largest mass genocides
Why?
in human history.
Why? Because of disease.
Not because
Because
of
of
disease,
disease.
because of massacres, because of things
Yes,
like
those happened as
because
well,
of-
about the
but the
Native
vast
Americans in
majority
Canada
of
and
those
America and
Latin...
Australia
He's
and
Latin
Aborigines.
American, you muppet. The Latin
I wasn't
Americans,
talking about him.
what happened in Latin America was
Okay,
a travesty,
mate, you're
was
gonna
a travesty,
go and talk to
and
your little
Christians
YouTube
in the
channel.
time
I'm
spoke
gonna
out
help.
against it. You don't know. Go and look up the Franciscans and the Dominicans. They were opposed to what the colonialists were doing to the
Okay,
natives.
so Christians speaking up against
You
that
don't
matter,
know.
but now Muslims speaking
You don't
up against
know.
jihadis
But now let
don't
me ask you a
matter.
question. Now
no,
let me ask you a
I'm not
question.
going to let you ask me
Yeah,
a
I'm
question
going to
because
ask you a question
haven't let
anyway.
me speak. You haven't
You
let me
have
debate.
said-
You've constantly interrupted me. If
So
you want
have
to
you.
go off for your
That's
little
fine.
YouTube channel and have fun,
You have
I'm going to
said-
do that. I've actually
You
got
have
stuff to do
said-
today. You're
you
clearly
have
not
said
interested in having a
that-
debate. You're clearly interested in
I answered your question.
So
You
why
said you're opposed to
haven't I-
apostasy laws. There you go, liberal progressive. Runs away. All the time.
Oh, and by the way, Black Lives Matter. Fuck the fuck.
Grandpa Bob.
How can that kind of cognitive dissonance, like how can you even entertain it? And yet so many people do, as you've just seen. What you just saw was a perfect example of rhetoric, of excuses, and of the villainization of the white working class Christian. Yeah, because we're white working class and Christian.